Welcome back. The details. Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri discussed in a phone call with his Tunisian counterpart Othman al-Grandi efforts to end the Israeli attacks on Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and the confrontations in the West Bank and Al-Quds. During the call, Shukri appreciated Tunisia's efforts at the UN to voice the Arab position towards the developments as adopted in the Arab League Council meeting last Tuesday. The two ministers also probed Security Council meetings scheduled for tomorrow. In Amman, King Abdullah II warned against the failure to seek a solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, adding that violations of Jerusalem's Al-Quds Mosque endanger stability and security and foster extremism. Meanwhile, American President Joe Biden's envoy, Hadi Amr, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Israel and Palestinian Affairs, arrived in Israel. The U.S. Embassy said that the target of the visit is to reinforce the need to work toward a sustainable calm. The American official will meet with Israeli leaders in Al-Quds before heading to the occupied West Bank to hold talks with Palestinian officials. On the ground, 10 members of a single extended family were killed in an Israeli occupation forces strike early on Saturday on the western Gaza Strip. We have more details in the coming report.
Israel pummeled Gaza with airstrikes with no sign yet of an end to the worst escalation in years after 6 days of conflict and amid a rising death toll. Palestinian medical officials said at least 139 people have been killed in Gaza since Monday, including 39 children and 22 women and 950 others wounded. In a most recent attack in the blockaded enclave, Israeli bombardment killed 8 children and 2 women belonging to one family when their house in a western Gaza refugee camp was hit. Meanwhile, Israel claimed that a death, including a soldier on the Gaza border, in the violence with some people hurt as they ran for shelter in settlements and towns near the Gaza Strip hit by rockets launched from Gaza. Meanwhile, the Palestinian presidency strongly condemned the brutal killing carried out by the Israeli occupation forces against the whole family in Gaza Strip. The Palestinian presidency reaffirmed the need for the international community to intervene, led by the UN Security Council and the International Quartet, to provide protection for the Palestinian people who are exposed to brutal Israeli occupation aggression and to put pressure on the Israeli occupation government to stop its aggression immediately. The presidency added that without an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital, peace will not be reached. In the same context, Malaysia and Indonesia on Saturday called on the United Nations Security Council to intervene and stop Israel's strikes on Gaza as the conflict between Israeli forces and Palestinians raged on. Meanwhile, several thousand people also marched in Sydney and hundreds in Melbourne on Saturday, protesting against Israeli attacks on Gaza amid days of conflict between the two sides. Paris also braced for possible clashes on Saturday, as organizers vowed to hold a march in support of the Palestinians through the French capital, despite a ban by authorities fearing a flare-up of violence.
Egypt sent 10 ambulances into Gaza on Saturday to pick up casualties of Israeli occupation forces bombardments for treatment in Egyptian hospitals. Medical and security sources said that further 5 ambulances have been deployed to enter Gaza later, and 3 Egyptian hospitals have been readied to provide treatment. As Palestinians marked on Saturday their displacement in the 1948 war that created Israel, 11 of them were killed and 150 others wounded in the West Bank after protesters and Israeli forces clashed on Friday. The confrontations in many cities in the occupied territories are the worst in years. Israel claimed on Friday more than 2,000 rockets had been fired from Gaza at Israel since Monday, with half intercepted by missile defenses and 350 falling into the Gaza Strip. Back home and to the daily report of the Ministry of Health regarding the COVID-19 developments. Ministry of Health reported 1,197 new COVID-19 infections and 56 new death cases. The ministry also announced that 556 were discharged from hospitals after receiving treatment and their full recovery according to the WHO guidelines and protocols to raise the total number of the recovered to reach 179,817 cases.